Good morning. Welcome back. I hope you all had a happy and patriotic 4th of July. I want to introduce Steve Scalise's son, Harrison, who is here with us today. So he's seated with all of you. Harrison.
That's the first question.
It's great to have so many members of our family here throughout the summer. This week, House Republicans are hard at work bringing the National Defense Authorization Act to the floor, delivering on one of our top priorities of our commitment to America, a nation that's safe. The NDAA focuses on protecting our national security, supporting military families, and investing in military readiness. The bill prioritizes the needs of the brave men and women in uniform and their families and includes the largest pay raise for our service members in over 20 years, as well as critical improvements in healthcare and military housing. Importantly, this bill goes after the woke, failed far-left policies that far-left Democrats have wrongfully forced onto the Department of Defense and our men and women in uniform. I've been on the Armed Services Committee throughout my time in Congress, including as a subcommittee chair and ranker. My district is home to Fort Drum, the 10th Mountain Division, the most deployed division in the U.S. Army since September 11th. Many of the provisions that I championed and led, whether strengthening our missile defense or passing a bipartisan service member parents' Bill of Rights for DoD schools, are included in this bill. I'm proud to always deliver this result for the hardworking families, especially the military families in my district. House Republicans are proud to support a strong national defense, prioritizing military readiness and our service members' needs over Joe Biden's far-left woke agenda at the DoD. We are focused on countering the rapidly growing threats from communist China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, while ensuring much-needed oversight over Biden's politicization of the military. And as we do every week, I'm proud to introduce one of the newly elected freshmen. This week, it's Representative Mark Alford, who is a member of the Armed Services Committee, and he represents Fort Leonard Wood and Missouri's 4th District. Mark.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I appreciate that. Good to see everyone. My name is Mark Alford, and I am from the 4th Congressional District of the great state of Missouri, not just Fort Leonard Wood, but also Whiteman Air Force Base, home to the B-2 stealth bomber and soon to be home to the new B-21 bomber. I tell you what, folks, we are at a critical time in our nation's history right now, and that's what this NDAA is all about. It is taking on the pacing threat from communist China. With China on the rise, military recruitment is at an all-time low in our nation. Public confidence in our military is weakening, and we face significant challenges that we must overcome. Right now, only 9% of our nation's young people have any interest in joining the military. That's sad. We have got to restore patriotism and confidence in our military, and the woke programs that have been indoctrinated and infiltrated our military has got to go. And the NDAA is going to get rid of a lot of these. We're going to gut a lot of these programs. We're banning teaching critical race theory. We are banning the drag queen shows on military bases. You've heard about this. Members, through approval from the armed services, have gone on with their drag queen performances and trying to recruit members through a digital ambassador program. We are making sure that that does not happen anymore. We are defunding our counter-extremism working groups. We're eliminating the chief diversity officer, and gutting the DEI workforce. We're also establishing a Parents' Bill of Rights so that parents can review materials taught in DoD schools. And we're providing a path back for those who left the military because they would not take the mandated COVID vaccine. We've got to make things right, and I'm most proud that we are giving the military a raise of 5.2%. It is long overdue. We've got to restore confidence in our military, and the NDAA is the path forward to do that. Thank you, and I'd like to bring up now our whip, Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Mark. Great job. Last Friday, we marked 6 months of the House Republican majority. And over these past 6 months, many members of the media have continually underestimated House Republicans. When we were getting ready to pass H.R. 1, our first big legislative item on the agenda, they didn't think we could do it, but we did. We made good on our promise to help lower costs for families and unleash American energy. When we took up H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act, they doubted whether we could get that done. We passed it and provided a common-sense blueprint to address Biden's inhumane crisis at the southern border. When the Biden White House and Schumer Senate refused to come to the negotiating table on the debt limit, we led the way by passing our own legislation that saves taxpayer dollars while avoiding default. And when Democrats couldn't bury their heads in the sand any longer, we passed a debt limit deal that changes the way Washington works and puts us on a path towards fiscal responsibility for years to come. We've also forced Democrats to come along with us as we've governed on issues like ending the COVID public health emergency and overturning the D.C. City Council's radical criminal code overhaul. Time and time again over the last 6 months, House Republicans have beaten the odds to deliver on our promises to the American people. The last 6 months have shown Americans what it looks like to have a House that works for them again. And I look forward to continuing our mission of restoring common sense to the nation's capital, one piece of legislation at a time. And the guy who leads us in that process, Steve Scalise, our Majority Leader.
Please hold the applause. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whip. And as Tom talked about, it's been a very busy first 6 months under this Republican House majority. And this week is no different. We've got a very busy agenda this week, starting the National Defense Authorization Act, a bill that's really important, especially under what we've seen with Joe Biden, moving the focus of our Department of Defense away from its core mission and trying to inject his woke ideology and the left's woke ideology at the expense of our ability to confront our adversaries. This NDAA refocuses the military on its core mission. One, making sure that we give the tools to our men and women in uniform, not just a pay raise, but the actual tools that they need to go out and be trained properly, to go out and have the best military technology in the world to combat adversaries who want to do us and our allies around the world harm. And that's what this is focusing on, the threat that the Chinese Communist Party is posing on the world. Biden has gotten so far away from that. This NDAA refocuses what has been needed for a long time, a conversation about how we properly fund our nation's defense. And you're going to see a robust amendment process, over 200 amendments made in order. That process is continuing. We're still having more conversations, but we've already got an agreement on a large number of amendments that we will start taking up today, start voting on tomorrow through the rest of this week, and then ultimately passing the bill. While we're doing this, there is a lot of other work going on. Our oversight committees are doing robust hearings. You're going to see the FBI Director this week, the FTC Administrator coming up this week, and she was rebuked again by the courts, trying to inject her radical ideology to block the ability for companies to merge to make those American companies stronger. She's continued to try to impede that ability in the court. Once again, you saw yesterday in the Microsoft case, striking that down. So you're going to see the hearings to hold this administration accountable. And then we're bringing more legislation to address some of the problems we've seen. I've been working with our committee chairman on a number of things that frankly have not been focused on the way they need to. Jody Arrington and Chairman Comer are working on a task force that will be looking into improper payments that are going out. The sixth largest expenditure item in the federal budget, sixth largest, are improper payments going out to people that don't deserve them. Over $250 billion last year were sent to people that don't deserve them, including some people in foreign countries getting things like COVID relief. Checks going out to people for tax credits who don't exist, who don't even have valid Social Security numbers, people that are here illegally, getting taxpayer benefits for programs that are only supposed to be limited to American citizens. Again, $250 billion we've already identified in improper payments, and Joe Biden doesn't care that this money is going out the door. These are hardworking families who are working hard, struggling under the weight of Biden's inflationary policies, having trouble paying for their electricity bill, for food at the grocery store, and then they find out that the sixth largest item that the federal government spends money on is sending checks to people who don't deserve that money while they're working 2-3 jobs in some cases to barely get by. So we're going to be aggressively rooting that out as well. So we're going to keep working while American people continue to expect to see this administration try to reverse the trend, but they're not. But in the meantime, we're going to keep doing our work. With that, unless Harrison has a first question, I'll take somebody else's. Yes.
Just a question on the NDAA. First, on timing, are you guys going to finish it this week? And you just talked to Mr. Scott Perry, the agency. He says abortion, gender, and Ukraine amendments have got to get a vote. Will those amendments get votes?
Yeah, and we've been having conversations with Scott Perry and others on just what the final round of amendments will be. There are already some amendments that have made it through on some of those issues. There's additional conversations we're having. We did get agreement last night. I think it was about 290 amendments that we got agreement on that we put in the rule that we're going to pass today. And so once that rule passes, we'll then start actually debating those amendments and start voting on them tomorrow. And then we're going to continue the conversation on the remaining items.
Thank you, leaders. Scalise, one question for you and then one for Whip Emmer. Can you comment on the CBO's testimony on Social Security's finances that's released today? And then for Whip Emmer, do you expect the rule on today's NDAA amendments to pass, given last month's kerfuffle?
I'll address with CBI. I haven't read what they put out today, but I know in the past we actually had a full, not House Republican conference, a full Congress conference with the CBO director to talk about the report that he put out on Social Security, Medicare, and the Transportation Trust Fund. Once President Biden's budget came out, they confirmed that under the President Biden budget over the next 10 years, all three of those trust funds would go bust. And clearly that's a major concern. Look, our seniors worked hard to pay into programs like Social Security and Medicare, and they earn those benefits. And the fact that because of President Biden's out of control spending over the last few years, it's actually sped up the insolvency of important programs like Social Security is a major concern. We need to protect those programs and strengthen them for future generations.
And the Whip's office listens to all our members. I'm confident that we're going to be moving forward with these amendments. But we're going to have to listen to all our members. We had a great discussion in conference this morning, and those discussions will continue. And as we've talked about in the first 6 months, we'll ultimately work together as a team and we'll get it done.
But the votes are there to pass today's rule?
I'll say it again. We are talking to all of our members. I'm confident that the rule will go forward today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On the House GOP tax bill, do you expect to get it on the floor before the August recess, or is that something that will take up later?
Well, the agenda right now is very full. You look at the appropriations bills, we already have half of the appropriations bills out of committee, and Chair Granger is working on the remaining 6 right now. 2 more are coming out of committee this week. The other 4 are coming out of subcommittee this week. So, we're looking at a lot of time being spent on appropriations bills. Chairman Smith is working with other members on remaining issues with that bill. We want to get it done as soon as we can bring it forward, but we have a lot of other bills that are teed up. But getting the NDAA done and then getting the appropriations bills are what are front and center right now. Obviously, with some deadlines looming, those are the ones we're dealing with first, and then we'll really look forward to getting that economic agenda moving forward. Way back, all the way in the back, yes.
New York Times. Why the reticence to give Perry and others the amendment votes that they want on issues like Ukraine, abortion, trans rights? Is it that you're afraid that they might actually get onto the bill and complicate the NDAA, or that they'll split the GOP? And just to follow up on
I wouldn't categorize it as reticence. Obviously, we're having discussions about a lot of amendments. There were over 1,500 amendments filed, so it's not like you just say, let's let all 1,500 amendments in. We go through all of the amendments and we work with the members, and so that process is going on right now.
But it doesn't usually look like this in the end, right? So
Oh, you'd be surprised. It looks just like this a lot of times.
And just to follow up on what Eric was asking, how do you get this done this week, or is this going to have to be delayed now in its resolution? When do you think you can actually make a deal?
Well, we're going to move through as many as we can. If you look at the schedule for tomorrow, we have a vote series at 1:30 where we're going to start doing amendments. And you remember back, under the last Congress when they had proxy voting, every single vote, whether it was a quorum call, whether it was an amendment, you couldn't get a vote through the process without at least 25 to 35 minutes. We got rid of proxy voting, and in fact, now we're going to 2-minute voting. And so while we have hundreds of amendments, we'll probably have votes on. Some of them will be unblocked. We might have, about 10, 15, 20 that you can package together that are all similar. So not every one of those will be voted on individually, but with 2-minute votes, we will be processing, and then tomorrow night probably be voting at least until midnight. So we're going to go through, ultimately we're going to work through the process. If we can finish it all this week, we will. If it takes more time, we'll take it right. It's the most important thing is that we get the policy right, because we're talking about the priorities of funding our national defense. It's critically important that we get this right.
Last question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there's a handful of your members that are saying that they would prefer a standalone vote on Ukraine, even to return their vote for the NDAA in total. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you look at Ukraine, I think in the past you've had some comments, even during the debt ceiling negotiation, that some senators were saying, Republican and Democrat, were saying that they wanted a supplemental, and you heard the speaker saying that that wasn't something that we would be supporting. At the end of the day, what we're looking at in this NDAA is how to refocus our funding. You pick the number first, how much money will be spent on our nation's defense, but once you get into the priorities, that's when the real important battles happen. How do we fix some of the inadequacies we have right now with our naval fleet, for example? How do we make sure that we have the right tools and proper pay for our military service members? And, both Elise and Mark talked about that as members of the committee. Chairman Rogers, I applaud him and all of the members of the committee, because they also wanted to focus on our men and women in uniform. Look, we have a recruiting problem right now. You don't hear this Department of Defense talking about it enough. And frankly, I think a lot of the woke agenda that they're trying to inject into the military that moves them away from their core mission has hurt military recruiting. Their numbers are way off. There are a lot of young men and women that don't want to go into an indoctrination process. They want to be a part of fighting to defend our nation's values, to fight to defend our freedoms. And we've got to get back to that. So it's not just the amount of money, but it's how you set the priorities with the money that we spend to make sure the military gets put back on the focus of what it's supposed to do. And that's been taking up a lot of effort, both in committee and on the floor. So thank y'all.